I guess, release of Kalen Houtman, who they had signed over the weekend. So my son and I were joking that the Browns have gotten in the habit of signing a lot of guys that come off of the better teams, guys that have come off of the 49ers, off of the Broncos, off of the Seahawks here. And I'm like, well, you know what? Hey, I get it that they were cast off by those teams, but isn't that a higher level than some of the guys, the Spurgeon wins that we've seen over the years? I'm just saying, I don't know, but we have noticed that say, hey man, if you can't beat them, take the guys that they don't have a spot on the squad for. But Painter, 6'4", 310, came out of Virginia Tech. He was a 6th round draft pick by the Broncos. Spent his first year on the practice squad. Played on the active roster for a couple of the playoff games in his second season, and he was on all of the preseason games here this year. A 4-year starter there at Virginia Tech. So there you go. Another guy brought in here to try to add some depth to that offensive line. I would assume that's a roster signing there because they took him off of the practice squad of another squad there. So, but that's the latest here is the Browns. And pretty much, I think Mike Pettin had said that what the roster looks like when you get through today, when you get through practice and you start looking at the weekend, this is going to be the makeup of it. So anybody that thought that there was going to be perhaps a small trade or an attempt at getting a wide receiver in or whatever, you've got to think, and I mean, even then, we're at Wednesday, so you've got to think that the odds of that went completely out the window here. And this is the roster that the Browns are going with. This is the roster that the Browns are taking to Pittsburgh and starting the season with there. And, we'll see. I noticed Vashon, he had mentioned yesterday, I didn't get around to it, he had brought up a point about Brian Timms, a wide receiver who did not make the Browns. He was waived, and he ended up making the Patriots. And, Patriots, hey, I'm one of those guys that has a pretty high appreciation for their evaluation of talent and that, and it does make you wonder, especially with the depth and the problems that the Browns have here at wide receiver, for somebody else to find value there that they didn't. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, who knows? Maybe that doesn't play into anything. Maybe it does. I guess we'll have to see. And meanwhile, still waiting for the phone line to ring. So I'll open up the phone lines to you guys, 216-539-7535, 216-539-7535. Going to be joined momentarily by John McMullen from the Sports Network. And I noticed, I mentioned this earlier. This was something I was going to ask John about anyway, so I figure I'll pick up here. But Michael Sam, and I don't know if this has been official, but I believe the press conference was while we were on the air here, the signing of Michael Sam to the Dallas Cowboys. And I kind of said it at the start of the show. We talked about this yesterday, and I said, man, really, I said, this is it's a football decision. There's people who get paid, and we've brought this up, and when John joins us, he's also one that's made this point. People get paid to evaluate talent, and I'm sorry, but there's no way I can see a guy risking his neck, I mean, truly, over what a guy does off the field. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not one of those guys, man. But I do believe that the media attention and the media hype for a marginal guy is a lot of times reason that these teams won't bring a guy on, because it's the reason if the coach doesn't want to sit there and answer the first 5 minutes of every day's press conference with questions about the third string linebacker. And I'm exaggerating, but that's the problem. I mean, that's what it is. The one team that I think did sign him for reasons that don't have to do with football is Dallas. I believe that Jerry Jones and the Cowboys absolutely are that team, and they have no problem whatsoever jumping on the bandwagon of that media publicity. And if he can play, so be it. But if he can up the profile of the Dallas Cowboys, I'm telling you, that's the one spot that, like I said, the one spot that I think he lands at because of the publicity and not in spite of it. And with that, I am now joined by John McMullen from the Sports Network. I'm going to go to the phones to him now. John, how you doing, my man?
Hey, Jerry, doing well. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being here, and I think you probably know who we're talking about right now. I was mentioning Michael Sam signing with the Cowboys.
Oh, who's that?
Yeah, but I mentioned yesterday, we talked about it a bit and, about it being a football decision. But I was saying today before you came on that that's the one spot that he could have landed that I think brought him there. I think the publicity helped him get that opportunity instead of the opposite, because yesterday we were kind of debating whether the media helps him here, hurts him as far as him trying to land a spot, because, like I said, the coach doesn't want to spend the first 5 minutes talking about a guy who's only playing on special teams. But what are your thoughts on him ending up in Dallas?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. It's the only team that would, really envelop the added media attention and kind of enjoy it. And that's Jerry Jones, and, good for Michael Sam. I mean, there is a football aspect to it in the fact that they're a horrible defense on paper. 32nd ranked in the NFL last year, dead last, and they lost DeMarcus Ware, lost Jason Hatcher, lost Sean Lee to injury, Orlando Scandrick suspended for the first 4 games. So on paper, it looks like a disaster defensively, so it's also a good spot football-wise for Michael Sam. And, that's what I said from early in the process, that the people who were hoping Michael Sam would get drafted kind of didn't understand that it's better to not be drafted than to be drafted late in the 7th round, because if you're undrafted, you can pick your spot. And, Michael Sam's agents could have looked at the landscape and said originally, hey, Dallas is a good spot for us because they don't have any defensive talent, whereas the Rams are loaded at the defensive end position. And he was never going to make the Rams unless injuries occurred, and when they didn't, predictably he was cut. And then he finally got his chance. He got to survey the landscape, and he went to the one team more than any other that needs defensive help. And the second part of it is that you mentioned, if there's one guy who's going to enjoy it, it's going to be Jerry Jones. And, he's kind of subscribes to that theory that any publicity is good publicity. And so anytime people are talking about the Cowboys, he loves it.
Oh, yeah. You heard his thoughts when it came to Manziel. He said this draft pick alone would guarantee our relevance for the next 10 years, and he looks at it not just from football, but from business, and as you should. I get that aspect. And as far as Michael Sam goes, hey, all you need is one opportunity. It doesn't matter if they strictly brought you there for PR purposes. Who cares? All you need is one opportunity, and if you're able to take advantage of it, then from there, it really is all about what you do on the field. But you had to get, it's like trying to get that foot in the door, and maybe this is it for him because of what you said, all of those defensive reasons that he may get a chance to contribute.
Yeah, and you mentioned the distraction part of it, and if you go back to last Saturday, and you look at Jeff Fisher's press conference when the cuts were announced, now think about what's going on with the St. Louis Rams. First of all, football wise, they lose their starting quarterback to a torn ACL, so there's quite a few issues that if you were just dealing in a football sense, you have to talk about with the head coach. In the first 12 questions he got were in relation to Michael Sam. And that's exactly what was going on and why so many teams shied away from it, because most coaches don't want to deal with that distraction. They don't want to talk about a practice squad player. They don't want to talk about even a guy on the regular roster that's just a special teams player. And nonetheless, that's what was going on with Jeff Fisher. And as stated, Jerry Jones is completely different. Jason Garrett probably doesn't want to talk about it, but Jason Garrett is a head coach in name only. Probably the only head coach in professional football that's has no power whatsoever. I wouldn't be surprised if Jerry Jones didn't even run it by him. I don't know how to put it any more succinctly. It doesn't matter what Jason Garrett
on
thinks.
Sports Center. He got an alert on his phone and said, "Oh, Jerry's at it again."
Wouldn't surprise me at all. Think about what's going on in Dallas. Let me explain this to people because I don't know if people understand. just how impotent Jason Garrett is in Dallas. Obviously an offensive-minded guy. You go back a few years, he was calling the plays as an offensive-minded coach. Jerry Jones took that away from him, didn't allow him to call the plays, and brought in Bill Callahan to call the plays. That didn't work out. So Bill Callahan, who, by the way, is still the offensive coordinator and handles, and I put this in quotation marks, the running game for the Cowboys. Then he brings in Scott Linehan. Again, none of this is, Jason Garrett's not privy to any of this. Brings in Scott Linehan to call the plays. On the defensive side of the ball, Monty Kiffin's still the defensive coordinator, but he doesn't call the defensive plays because now they let Rod Marinelli call them. And again, he doesn't run any of this through the head coach of the team, who on Sundays is not allowed to call plays.
And some people,
that's the Dallas Cowboys.
And some people think the Browns had functionality issues, but that's a whole nother level right there, man.
Yeah, it really is. And,
wow.
If you wonder why the Cowboys are where they are, it's, pretty evident. But, again, it's the one team that wouldn't mind the added media attention. As I said, it doesn't matter. It absolutely does not matter what the head coach thinks to Jerry Jones. So,
and what? Oh, go ahead. I was just going to say, while we're talking about the Cowboys there, the other thing that they were in the headlines for here is the Josh Brent situation, with him now being given a 10-game suspension before he can return in Week 11. Of course, he had the issue with the drunk driving accident and the time. Talk to me a bit about him and his return to the NFL here, and how you think this is going to go.
Well, by the way, let me say this. I can't wait until they kick off that game tomorrow, because all we've talked about seemingly for the past 2 months is who's getting suspended, when's insert name getting suspended. And yesterday we had Josh Brent, we had Wes Welker, and, what can you say? I mean, 10 games, and if he does the stuff that he needs to do, he'll be reinstated. And, Jerry Jones has stuck by him. A little surprised, I guess, simply because, Josh Brent's not thought of as, a top-tier prospect or somebody who's going to come in and help your team immediately. And generally when fringe guys get in significant trouble, it's pretty easy to just cut ties and move on from them. So in one aspect, when I spend so much time criticizing, and deservedly so, Jerry Jones in a football sense, I give him a lot of credit for sticking by a kid he believes in. And if he does everything he needs to do, there's no reason he shouldn't get another chance. That's what our society is based on. It's supposed to be based on. So I kind of applaud Jerry Jones for sticking by somebody who was so embattled for so long.
What are your thoughts on Brent's agents and their statements that they weren't happy and that they're going to appeal? I mean, really, shouldn't he be happy that he's getting an opportunity?
Yeah, I think they should shut up. I agree with you there. I mean, that's kind of silly on the surface if you think about what Josh Brent did, and the fact that obviously a former teammate is now deceased because of it. I think they should be happy. They're just being allowed to return to the NFL at any point.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, that's exactly. I'm with you there. So, anyways, talked enough about the Dallas Cowboys there. You brought up Wes Welker. Still details coming out with that. I don't know. I don't really know where you say, because this is one of those where you want to wait and see as things shake out here what it is. But obviously, it doesn't look good out at the front. And I think about that, and I just think, and I know I know you know where I'm going to go to. I know Josh Gordon did not get suspended for pot. He got suspended for his fifth abuse of the policy and all of that. Like, that's a totally different thing. But, we've talked and used statements like, got to get the guy some help and you got to get him off of marijuana. And then, and I'm like, man, when you hear the words ecstasy and things like that, those are much, to me, much harder drugs. And I get it. You're talking about somebody that doesn't have a history of any of